Let me get. What did I do with my paper? When Pastor June asked me originally to give my testimony, I put her off, used my shoulder problems, said I didn't want to be up here in a sling, and so she agreed. If nothing else, she is persistent. Beginning of this month, after Bible class, she came down to me and asked again if I would give my testimony. She said she was up here praying, and the Holy Spirit moved her to come down and ask me. She said, no pressure. Right, no pressure. So I agreed. For I am the Lord your God, who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I will help you. My 3 to 3.5 years here have been anything but. I have received God's help in many ways. When I first read this verse, I thought of the usual God holding his hand out, holding ours. Sometimes we weren't there. But I realized that God has many hands, hundreds of thousands, millions, and he uses those hands to help. Sometimes it's hands that are doctors, nurses, whatever. So when I thought of what I was going to say, I thought this scripture fit very nicely. I met my wife, Pat, at a picnic. Spent the whole picnic with her. Made a date. I was leaving for vacation. When I came back, I was taking her out, and this is going to date me. Some of you may remember this, to the Twin Coaches Supper Club on Route 51. It had live entertainment. I am a fan of Motown. Smokey Robinson and the Miracles were singing, so I thought I could try to impress her. And went to her house, met her parents. She came down the steps in a black dress, and my jaw dropped. She had me hooked before saying a word. However, it took me a bit longer to convince her to feel the same way. About a year later, we were married, May 9th, 1969. Our first child, Kelly, was born in September of 1969. It's amazing how the first child does not always take 9 months. A little bit of microwave there. We were clueless, and I do mean clueless. Me, much more than her. I was 21, Pat was 20. She was just finishing nursing school. I had no idea of what I was doing, especially becoming a parent. I mean, I just knew your clean clothes showed up in your closet every week, you know. That was Mom. But we loved each other, and we made it through. God blessed us with 2 more children. Kristen and a son, Brian, which blossomed into 6 grandchildren, and as I'm sure everybody here sitting here knows, 1 great-grandchild. I was raised Catholic, went to Catholic schools for 12 years. So Pat decided to convert to Catholicism. She felt that if we had one religion in the family, that would be the best way to go. So we stayed in the Catholic Church until our youngest, Brian, was of confirmation age. And we realized that there were so many differences between us and the Catholic doctrine that we had to leave. So we were looking for a church, and we found Holiday Park Methodist. And we joined the church, joined Bible class. Bible class. I spent 12 years in a Catholic education. First period every day was religion, and never once in 12 years was the word Bible mentioned. Never. They taught, but when I became a Methodist, my eyes were opened. I knew nothing about a Bible. It was like your eyes opening up. I started reading and wondered why. Maybe that is one of the reasons I left. I don't know. But we stayed there for a good while. And while at the church, Pat developed lung problems. Doctors thought it was allergy related. We had a few tests done. And they told us that Pat had a genetic disease where her body did not make the enzyme, or whatever you want to call it, that keeps your lungs pliable. There's no cure. They have medicine that would slow the progress, but the only cure would be a lung transplant. And she nixed that right away. So she would go to the hospital weekly and receive an injection, which, while I was working at U.S. Steel, was covered by insurance. So being the good husband that I was, and that she was having lung problems, I asked her one day if maybe she wanted me to get a handicapped person card for the car. Well, we're in church, so I can't tell you what she said. But she made it perfectly clear, because her last words were, "I am not handicapped." Well, needless to say, I never brought that up. She never gave an inch to this disease, and it just progressively got worse. But the kids, if we went shopping, we all tried to grab all the packages. No, she had to carry them up the steps. She just never let it bother her. And as time went on, her lungs did get steadily worse. And during that time, I was diagnosed with skin cancer. And I thought, well, skin cancer, that's not like the bad cancer. How bad can it be? Again, I was clueless. I had many surgeries, and Pat looked at my hand one day and said, "You need to get that looked at." I said, "Why?" She says, "You have skin cancer." So it wasn't it was an annoyance more than anything. I had surgeries and laser treatments. I had to put cream on my arms, but it wasn't so bad. But Pat's lungs kept getting worse. And we had decided to leave Holiday Park United Methodist Church and look for another church. We weren't happy there. By that time, I was driving a school bus. One day, a tall, thin gentleman walked in, a driver from another garage. He originally worked in Norwin, transferred to one of our garages in Shaler, and came to my garage at Fox Chapel. It was Chuck Lawson. We bonded immediately. We talked, and this was the time when the Methodist Church was splitting. And we talked a lot about global or not, and we both agreed global was our way to go. And one day he came to work and he said, Jim, he said, I'm preaching this Sunday. Our pastor won't be in town. She has to go out of town. And he asked me if I would come. I said, sure. And I said, can I bring my wife? He said, certainly. So we came. We were floored by you people. The way you treated us, and you could tell it was genuine. We listened to Chuck preach. We talked to people. Chuck introduced us to people. And when we left, we were going down the hill towards the turnpike. We hadn't reached the bottom of the hill. She turned to me and said, what do you think? And I said, I think we should join. She says, I do too. So we came the next week and told Chuck, we really would like to join. And we did. And we were so happy. Joined the Bible class, which to me was a revelation. Pat was used to it. And we were both, Pat was especially happy. She loved to come here and listen to Pastor and talk to people. And for my wife, that is a rare thing. Apparently, the talking gene that I got in multiple, I gave to none of my kids, and my wife never had that. We were getting ready to go to the church, our first church picnic. Pat wasn't feeling good. She had taken off work, which is a rarity. She was a registered nurse. She never missed work. I had been out, and I come back home, and she was dressed. And I thought, wow, she must be feeling better. And I said something to her, and she said, we're going to the hospital. Whoa. When she agrees to go to the hospital, it's not good. We went up to Forbes Hospital. They brought her in right away, put her on a heart monitor. Nurse looked at it, called the doctor. He come in, looked at it. People start coming in left and right. They admitted her. It was always a fear for me that she would hit the perfect storm, something that with her lungs she couldn't handle. She had already beaten double strep pneumonia, which was a scary process. So they admitted her, and she was fighting, and she wasn't getting any better. And I was off work then, so I spent my days at the hospital with her. Her telling me to go home and me telling her, no, I want to stay. Well, I went home after supper, went home to eat. And I went into the house and I left something in the car. I had taken my shoes off. So I went down to the car, got what I wanted. I was walking back up. We have 8 concrete steps, a landing, and then 2 more steps up to the porch into the house. As I was turning to go up the 2 steps, I lost my balance. And I ended up going down the 8 concrete steps. I broke my arm, so they took me to the hospital in an ambulance. And while I was there, they had me in a neck brace. My phone rang, and I knew who it was, but I couldn't answer. So it turned out that other than a broken arm and some bruises, I had no other injuries. So I was waiting for them to come in and take the thing off my neck when my daughter's phone rang, Chris, who lives with me. We both knew who it was. Chris answered, and I could hear her talking with my wife. I could only look straight up. And I heard Pat saying, Chris. And Chris said, don't worry, he's all right. And then she told her. So I came in the next day, and of course, she had a few words to tell me. But being careful and this and that. Well, I went to see an orthopedic doctor, and I had to have surgery. They had to put a plate and screws in my left arm. They scheduled the surgery for, what was it, August 29th, a Tuesday. In the meantime, Pat got worse. They took her to another unit, and she continued to worsen. And she asked them to put her on the vent. And again, all this time, it never entered my mind that she would not come home. Even when they took her up to the ICU to put her on the vent, never entered my mind. After she was on the vent the first day, she looked wonderful, peaceful, she could breathe. Kids were happy they were in. The next day, it was a different person. She looked terrible. As the week went on, she got worse and worse. And my kids came to me. Sorry. And told me that wasn't Mom laying in that bed. So we talked with the doctor up there. He told us there was one more thing. We could put her on dialysis. He says it may not work, but it's the only thing we have left. So I agreed. We left and went home. 5 o'clock in the morning, they called me. You had better come in. So we came in. And we agreed, kids and I, to take her off the vent. That was going to be a Saturday. So we came in Saturday. they took her off the vent, and she hung on for a few hours and finally passed. So I went to the funeral home, and the funeral director said, "How about we have the viewing on Tuesday?" And I said, "I can't. I'm scheduled for surgery for my arm on Tuesday." I said, "How about Wednesday?" He said, "Fine." So Tuesday, I had the plate and screws put in. Wednesday, we had the viewing. And Thursday, we had the funeral. I remember a lot of people from this church showing up, and we were very new. I don't remember one word that they said or anything that I said. So we buried Pat. God took her back. He had given me 55 years, just shy of living with her. We literally grew up together. Two kids that didn't have a clue to grandparents. And Pat's other great passion before was to become a great grandmother. Our eldest grandson had been with the same girl since high school. They finally got married, and Pat stepped up the program. They were outdoors people. They walked the Appalachian Trail together. Pat told our grandson, "Take the woman out of the woods and make me a great grandma." I told her, "Lighten up." She said, "No." She said, "They got all the time in the world to go play in the woods. I need to be a great grandma." She never made it. The day after her funeral, we got word that they were expecting. My daughters, bless them, told me, "Look, Dad, how long did she try on earth? Didn't have any luck. One day in heaven, job was done." A year later, our great-grandson was born, James. And while she wasn't here to see him, I have no doubt that she was up there. And she had a year to look, and she picked who God was sending us. And she picked a doozy. Shortly after Pat passed in August, I had another session with my skin cancer. I had a growth on my ankle, lower part of my right leg, and they decided to use radiation because it was on my burned area. I had leg burns when I was young. Said it would heal better. Well, they did the radiation, 6 weeks of it, but it wouldn't heal. I had skin grafts, 12 of them. Not one took hold. When I quit going to the dermatologist, I went to a wound clinic. And at that time, came to church one Sunday, and Nancy Zerby said to me, "Jim, would you mind if after the service we prayed over you?" I said, "Certainly." never refused prayers. So Nancy made the announcement here during her prayers and concerns. And amazingly, I don't think anybody left. The whole church was here. And the really amazing thing is that I believe that Nancy could have brought somebody in from the street and would have had the same turnout. I truly believe this church is special. Well, they prayed over me, and it was the most powerful thing I ever felt. I could feel God's healing going in my body. By the time they were done, I was in tears. But it worked. I think 2 weeks later, I went to the wound clinic. It looked to me like it was smaller, but I thought maybe that's just me. Doctor looked at it. He said, "That really looks good. It's gotten smaller." He said, "What'd you do?" I said, "I didn't do anything." I said, "God did." And it kept healing. When I originally went to him, it had been almost a year, and he thought it would take 2 years for my wound to close. Inside of a year, it finally closed. But before it closed, God wasn't quite done with me. I popped my shoulder, my bad shoulder, out of the socket. I'd like to tell you it was doing something manly, but I was opening a jar of pickles. And why I grabbed that lid with my right hand I am left-hand dominant. I open everything with this hand. I couldn't get that lid open, and I was just thinking of putting it down, tapping it with something. And my shoulder just popped out and went right back in. My daughter said, "You want to go to the hospital?" I said, "No, it doesn't hurt that bad." Well, 20 minutes later, we were headed to the hospital. They took x-rays. They told me, "You're right, it popped back into place, but you need to see your orthopedic doctor." So I did. I went to see him, and the first thing they do is x-ray. So Dr. Levine was his name. This was my second shoulder replacement. And he walked in and said, "I am very concerned." I didn't even hear the rest of it, but I knew I was in trouble. He told me that my entire shoulder was loose, screws, everything. He said there's only one thing that causes that, and that's infection. So he does not do that kind of surgery anymore. He handed me to another doctor in their practice, Dr. Moser, young fellow, which I met with him. And I liked him right away. I asked him, I said, "Just tell me the truth." And I said, "We'll get along fine." So they scheduled surgery for January, end of January. And I had told the people at church, and I had told them that I had given it to God. Well, maybe not completely. It seemed that every time I had a doctor's appointment, I had something in my mind of how it was going to happen. And it never turned out that way. And I realized that I was talking the talk, but I wasn't walking the walk. I was seeing pulmonologists because they gave me a PICC line which caused clots. I saw the infectious disease doctor because my shoulder was infected. When he operated, it was so bad, he took most of the bone out of my shoulder. Put in a spacer. And when I met with him, he told me 3 months with the spacer and another 3 months. And then maybe we'll see about putting a new shoulder in. He said, but first your leg has to heal. Well, I kept seeing doctors and just always creeped into my mind, maybe this will happen. Well, I was finally scheduled for the surgeon, and I was at home right before I went to him. I was by myself. I was trying to pay a bill on the phone. And I guess I hit rock bottom. Everything fell in. Thank goodness I was by myself. I sat up in my bedroom probably 20 minutes, screaming at the top of my lungs, crying. And then and there, I did give my life to God. And my next visit to the surgeon, I never had one thought about what was going to happen. I said, whatever happens, happens. You have it, Lord. I went in and sat down. He said, Jim, I think it's time we make you a new shoulder. I thought, wow. God had given me the plan with my leg. I never had a chance to get in the way. Nancy asked me if you could pray on me. Boom. God took care of it. You think I would have learned there? No. I had to learn the hard way. Well, they had to make my shoulder. He said this one was going to be a special one. I said, okay. So they put my new shoulder in. I waited, I think, 3 weeks. And I started physical therapy. I think I went through 45 sessions of physical therapy, twice a week, every week. I never missed, did my exercises. But I was having pain. I didn't understand. So they sent me back to the surgeon. He took a picture. He come in and he said, I don't have good news. And I thought, oh. He had 5 screws holding my shoulder together. 2 I snapped off inside the bone, and the other 3 I pulled out. He said, I don't have to replace your whole shoulder, but I do have to do some surgery. Well, that was hard to take. But with the people here and my faith, it was okay. I went in again, and he did what he was going to do, and he told me that I would be severely limited in what I could do with my arm, which I thought was fine. In getting back to the verse from Isaiah, I have had so many hands help me. I can't tell you how many times Pastor June prayed over me, Nancy, and other in the congregation. My Bible class. After Pat passed, they were a godsend. All of you. Your words of kindness, your cards, you have no idea how much you meant. And I never returned thank yous for the cards. So here and now, thank you. You have no idea, none. I have been to many churches, Catholic, Methodist, but I know without a doubt that my journey here was not circumstance. Chuck didn't leave 3 garages to come to mind. Did he invite me just by chance? No. I think this was God's plan. I think he brought Pat and me here so that he could finish our plans. Pat was ecstatic. She loved coming here. It was the happiest I've seen her. Sadly, she didn't get to come here very long. But God prepared her. And he prepared me to survive her passing. And if there's ever a message that I could give, it would be, don't change who you are. If you think you should say something, do it. You have no idea what you would think of as nothing, how much it meant to me. And for the first time in my life, Circleville isn't my church, it's my home. When I come here, and it's infrequent, but sometimes when I'm sitting in that pew, Pat visits. I can feel her beside me. Not often, but there have been a few times. So it hasn't been an easy road, but God has provided the help. And for that, I will be forever grateful. And as I said, I will consider this not just my church, but my home. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.